Hi everyone, this is Jessica Thielen and I chose the 4R program, or the Reading, Writing, Respect, and Resolution program for this assignment. Just to give you a little background, I'll provide more in my handout, but this was designed by the Morningside Center for Teaching Social Responsibility, which is a community-based organization designed to partner with schools, predominantly in the urban New York area, and they work to strengthen student social and emotional intelligence. So the 4Rs works by combining social and emotional learning into language arts for students in pre-kindergarten through middle school. The curriculum is grade specific and includes teacher guides, age-appropriate activities, as well as age-appropriate books that have been chosen due to their high literacy quality and high relevance to the theme for that unit. There are 35 lessons that are designed for 20 minutes to an hour of a weekly lesson throughout the school year. They're broken down into 7 sequential units that start with building community, understanding and handling feelings, listening, assertiveness, problem solving, dealing with diversity, and cooperation. Each lesson allots for time for read aloud, where the class reads the story together, book talk, where the class gains a deeper understanding and connection to the book, as well as applied learning, where the skill sets that go with the theme are practiced. There's also a parent component to reinforce the content, and I talk about that a little more in my handout. So the lesson I'm going to share with you is from the 3rd grade curriculum, and it's the 3rd unit, and it's entitled Understanding and Respecting Others, Becoming a Better Listener. This was made available by the Morningside Center website, and I'll provide a link for the entire unit along with that book list in my handout. So the unit starts out, I'll show you, it will be backwards, but with an introduction to the instructor, just on the importance of the content that they're teaching in the lesson. So for this one, it talks about the importance of listening to others and understanding people's point of view to resolve conflict. How generally when we solve a problem, we don't just get our way, we need to compromise, and that being a good listener is a learned skill. So it just kind of reviews that with the instructor. And then each unit also provides a chart, which will also be backwards, but that breaks down the literacy ideas and skills, and then this has the conflict resolution ideas and skills that will be addressed in the unit. So for the one that I have, the literacy ideas that will be addressed throughout the entire unit, not necessarily just in the lesson that I'll show you, is stories have characters. One character can tell the story, or first-person narration. Sometimes we can use stories to understand our own lives. Writers can use rhymes and repetition to make the story more interesting. And words and pictures together can tell a story. So the literacy skills then are predicting, identifying the main idea, asking questions, expressing ideas clearly, providing evidence to back up one's assertions, and listening. So then the conflict resolution ideas are: listening is key to solving conflict. Listening can help us be less angry. Listening can help us think better. And then the conflict resolution skills are listening well, using words to communicate with others, taking initiative, and developing positive body language. And unfortunately, I don't have anyone that can pose as my student, so I will work with pretend 3rd graders, which will make my transitions a little choppy throughout the demonstration, but I hope to at least give you a good idea of what the lesson will look like. I also want to put a disclaimer that the book that is designed to be with this lesson is called The Pain and the Gain, or The Pain and the Great One by Judy Blume, and that's more of a picture book story that is also designed to be a chapter book series. And the only available option I had at my local library was one of the chapter books, so I'll just use it and reference it throughout the lesson like it's the real one, but just so you know, I recognize that it's not. So All right, here we go. So boys and girls, we're going to begin our 4R lesson for the week, and we're starting with a new book. So for right now, we're just going to look at the title and the cover. I want you to tell me what you notice and what you think the book is going to be about. Who are the main characters, and can you guess which character is which? And we see that the author of this book is Judy Blume. Has anyone else read any other, or has anyone read any other stories that she's written? And so now that we've taken a good look at the story, or at the cover, I'm going to read the story. And for this presentation, I will just read you the summary that the teacher guide provides. One, because that's all I have, and two, just to give you an idea. So the summary is, this book is really 2 in 1. We first read about the Pain, a 6-year-old boy who, according to his 3rd grade sister, gets to do whatever he wants and is their parents' favorite. She complains that he won't get out of bed in the morning and has to be carried into the kitchen, as well as helped to dress. When she tries to leave without him, he cries and their mother yells at her. The parents ooh and ah over his schoolwork and let him have dessert even if he hasn't finished the main course, and don't seem upset when he makes messes. When she complains that he shouldn't stay up as late as she does, they agree and they put him to bed. But the evening is not exactly as she had hoped. The parents do not pay attention to her. She decides to go to bed because without the pain, there's nothing to do. Remember that tomorrow, her mother says. Nevertheless, the next day brings another litany of grievances until she ends with the plaint, I think they love him better than me. In the next section, entitled The Great One, we get the brother's point of view. He thinks she's a jerk who considers herself superior just because she can do so many more things than he can, such as use the telephone, open the cat food, hold their baby cousin, and play the piano. He resents her having friends over to play with blocks, which occasionally he knocks down in his capacity as the garbage man. The parents agree that he should have the blocks to himself for a while. He builds a whole country, but it's not the funnest thing to play blocks alone. Remember that tomorrow, says his mother. At the beach, his resentment over his sister's ability to swim and dive boils over when she calls him a baby because he's scared to put his face in the water. The conflict quickly escalates as he spits water at her, pulls her hair, and even pinches her in response to the name-calling. His last thought is, I think they love her better than me. All right, so now that we have read the story, I want you all to pair up and talk about the book, and then we'll come back together as a class. So I want you to talk about what was interesting to you or what questions you have. And so at this point, after the students are discussing that, the teacher or instructor wants to encourage as much participation as possible. And the teacher guide talks about doing that by, if a student gives their point of view, you can say to the class, do you agree with such and such? And kind of get that conversation going. As well as if a student is to build off of another student's opinion, they have to first paraphrase what that first student said. So, for example, if Johnny were to say, I didn't like the big sister at all. All she did was pick on the little brother and he didn't do anything. She reminds me of my big sister. The teacher could say to the rest of the class, do you agree with Johnny that the little brother didn't do anything in the story? And that will more than likely generate further discussion that would be facilitated and monitored by the teacher. Another example would be if Frank said, in my opinion, the parents shouldn't have let the brother and sister fight. They should have stopped it earlier. Before I, as the teacher, would allow Jill to say something in response to that, she would have to paraphrase Frank's opinion and would say something like, Frank thinks the parents should have stopped the arguing sooner. But in my opinion, they did it just right. They let the brother and sister solve the problem on their own. So once you have that discussion, the teacher would bring up, I want to know if you noticed anything about the way the words were placed on the page. It looks a little different, huh? And I realized that my book didn't, but that's because this story is written as a prose poem. And that's a poem that doesn't rhyme and uses regular sentences. I wonder why you think the author did that. Once there was a hearty discussion, the teacher would move to the book talk portion of the lesson by saying, We touched on this a little bit already, but there have been several conflicts in the book that we talked about. A conflict is a disagreement, argument, or a fight. They often start out small and build up. One person will say something, then the other person will get mad and say something back, and it just builds and builds until the conflict is worse. In this book, there were many places where things started out as a simple irritation and built to a big conflict. So I'm going to read the book again, and this time I want you to notice all the places where the conflict gets worse or escalates. Alright, so now that we've read the story, let's look at one conflict I remember when the brother was slow to get dressed and his sister wanted to catch the bus. She walks out and the brother starts crying, and this makes their mother yell at her. Now she's even more mad at her brother. Have you guys ever lived through scenes like this with your siblings, cousins maybe, or friends? When I call on you, I want you to when you share, I want you to really focus on describing the back and forth reactions that made the conflict get worse or escalate. So good sharing, guys. Now part of the narrator's point of view, when it's the sister, is that they love him better than me. Do you guys think that's true? I'll give you a moment to think, because when I call on you, I want you to provide evidence from the story to back up your claim. Okay, so now on page 29, we'll see that the conflict is escalating when we read the brother say, "This is why I have to spit at her and pull her hair and even pinch her sometimes." Is it true that he really has to do these things? And now the brother also thinks they love her better than me. Is this true? Alright, now in this part of the discussion, I'm going to write down what you guys say on the board. So, what are some of the big ideas this book deals with? Some of you might say fighting or conflict. What are the things the story seems to be saying that are important to you? You might say you can work the problem out, or sometimes people have different views. And then what do we think the author is trying to do in this book? And you might say, tell a story about siblings fighting, or teach kids that people have different ideas. So now, as the teacher, what I'm hearing you say is that the people have conflicts when they have different points of view. Can we agree that brothers and sisters or close friends can have different points of view? Yeah, so if that's the case, is conflict inevitable, or that we can't avoid it? Yeah. So if conflicts happen, do we need to figure out the best way to deal with them? Yes, and that's what this 4R unit is going to help us with. We've mentioned a lot of different conflicts in this story, and I'm wondering what your thoughts and suggestions are for how the brother and sister could de-escalate or calm down the conflicts. Let's think about that and share aloud. Some of you would say maybe walk away, just tell the sibling how you feel, or take a deep breath. Alright, so we're starting to wind down our lesson. And I would say, as the teacher, that it's very common for people to feel that someone else is getting the attention that we want from a parent, a teacher, or another student. Have you ever felt that someone was getting all the attention that you wanted? This person may have been older or younger than you. So I want you to pair up with someone different and talk about how you felt about this person who is getting all the attention that you wanted. And so now that you've talked about and shared how you felt, I want you to now think about that other person's point of view, what that might have been, and share that with your partner. So earlier in this lesson, I asked you to think about a conflict that you experienced that kept escalating, that kept going back and forth and getting worse. Now I want you to think about something that you could have done to de-escalate that conflict. Can you think of something you wish the other person would have done to de-escalate? Once you think about that, then we'll share as a class. So now it's time for the writing portion of the lesson. I want you to use your own words and write a dialogue from one scene of the book where there was conflict. Now remember, when we're writing a dialogue, that's when we're writing what two or more people are saying to each other. However, for this, when you write the scene, I want you to change the ending so that the brother and sister work out or prevent the conflict. So an example would be when the conflict at the beach began to escalate because the sister was teasing the brother because he was scared to put his face in the water. This conflict could have been worked out if the brother told the sister how he was feeling about her teasing. Then the sister could have either left him alone or maybe nicely played with him to help him be less afraid. After we share those, we'll talk about the type of book that we just read. So this book is a prose poem. We can make prose poems by taking vivid sentences and rearranging them on a page. So I want you to write a sentence about the conflict that you keep referring to, the one that kept building and building, and the one that you thought of different ways you could de-escalate it. So Vivian shared that my brother always wants to ride my bike, and this time I let him and he scraped the bright blue paint. That was very vivid and a good description. So now I'm going to have other students come up and arrange the words so it looks like a prose poem. Joey came up and took Vivian's sentence and made it like this, which I know is backwards. Great. So now I want all of you to try that with your own sentences, and we will share. So now that you've completed your prose sentences, I want you to get up and move for our last activity. I'm going to divide you into groups of 3 or 4, and I want you to act out 2 scenes from the book. One scene I want you to act out from the sister's point of view, and one scene I want you to act out from the brother's point of view. And after you have time to practice, we're going to have a few groups share. All right, thank you all for your thoughtful performances. We will continue with this book and the theme of understanding and respecting others and being a good listener in our lesson next week. All right, go ahead and line up for recess. So that's all I have to share. I hope this gave you at least an idea of the flow of this lesson. There's definitely ample opportunity for students to discuss as a class and in smaller groups, which means that the teacher really needs to help facilitate that conversation. This was difficult for me to demonstrate because I didn't have any students, but I hope by at least providing the probing questions that gave you a good idea. So thanks.